Hey, my name is Josh. So y'all have hit it on this a little bit, but I'm really interested in the sort of meta side of like what does a day in the studio actually look like as far as and you're making these decisions, but how much do you prepare before you go in? What does it look like making mistakes, and how is that edited out? Is it done in real time? Is it done in post, or what does that look like?
So normally, for the average book, we read it once through, and then we start recording it. We use Pro Tools. We have Mac Minis, and we use Pro Tools. And so we have a software program. So you open up a new session for the book, and you have this many tracks, and you start at the beginning. If you make a mistake, we have a keyboard in the booth. The Mini is outside because of the fan noise. So we are engineering ourselves using keyboard shortcuts. So if I'm in the middle of a track and I make a mistake, I just rewind, play back, hit record when I get to the sentence I screwed up, keep going. And then there's a soft process of you get to the end, you create fades to kind of smoosh your edit noises, then you consolidate, and that's your WAV file, and that gets sent off.
And y'all do all of that yourselves?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't recommend that necessarily as a way to start, just because it's really hard to do. We've been doing it. We've been narrating for Kate's been narrating for almost over 30 years, and I'm just slightly less than that. A couple of things. Normally, it's your concentration that goes first. So one of the most important things you can do is get a great night's sleep the night before. It's not your voice that will go, it's your concentration. Think of it to a certain degree as if you are a concert musician of some kind, because the book is the score and you're interpreting it. So you're looking at all those notes and you're making decisions in terms of dynamics and all those choices. And that takes a lot of concentration. And then, so that usually wears out before anything else wears out. And then, there are narration styles. There are hundreds, thousands, probably a narration style for every narrator out there. Some people only have one voice that they use, but they know how to tell a story. Other people create lots of character voices because that's their forte. I again, to use a musical metaphor, it's very much like my instrument has 6 different instruments in it. I've got a bass, I've got a cello, I've got a violin, I got a piccolo, and I got a drum. So how can I arrange this group of notes to fit so that those instruments can tell that story? Other people only have a French horn, but you've seen soloists, like, okay, they just told that whole story, even though you're used to hearing it with a full orchestra or whatever. And that's so that's those are the decisions you have to make. And you have about, I don't know, some people can knock out 3-4 hours of finished work a day. I can't. And in terms of making mistakes, that's the first rule. That's the first thing I would say to anybody is, it's not a function of saying all the words correctly. That's almost the last consideration in terms of telling the story. So you cannot be afraid of making a mistake. This one can go pages without making a mistake. I usually crash and burn about, on an average page, probably 3 times a paragraph. Sometimes it feels like I'm going phrase to phrase. I just cannot get it the way I want. And sometimes you're like, yeah, I said all the words correctly, and I totally missed the sense of the sentence. So let's just get rid of that, throw it away. And you can't, you have to, like, that's part of, that has to be like, looking at the sculpture going, I carved all the lines and it looks like a piece of clay. Not So
there is something that I'm wondering if there's a microphone in front of the speaker, because I think we're getting a little bit of reverb. So maybe they can be shifted away from the speakers. There is something that's quite similar to athletics about this. I think there's a mind-body connection where your mind is strategizing, but your body is fully involved. And there is if we go away for a week, we usually go visit Michael's family in Minnesota for a week in August. When we get back, I get back in the booth, I'm out of breath. Because I haven't been doing it every day, I no longer have the stamina. And it takes a couple days to kind of reset that stamina, resilience ability to keep going without making mistakes. Are we good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask a question about. Oh, sorry. I was actually going to ask another question about vocal health, if that's okay. Like, is there particular things that you do? Because I know that speaking is like one of the worst things you can do for your voice. I teach singing and stuff, so it's all like, what does that look like as far as someone who speaks for a living?
So from my, he's going to go on and on about this. I'm just going to say very briefly, from my point of view, it is all about intention. If I understand the intention of the story, if I understand the intention of the character, then it is effortless. And my voice does not tire. Because I'm connected to the reason why, the need, the urgency, why this word, why this phrase. And that's almost more of a spiritual connection than a technical connection. But if I don't understand the why, I stumble and fall and make mistakes and the voices sound flat and I can't get going. If I understand the reason, then all the channels are clear. There's no blockage.
Yeah, I think very much what you would recommend to a singer is what I would say for vocal health in terms of rest. I drink tons of coffee. Most people can't do that because it dries out their vocal cords. It really depends on your physical body. There are people who can't really eat a big meal because all of a sudden their stomach is gurgling. But vocally, what usually gets me is I'll be playing around with a character and throwing the tension into a certain part of the mechanism that's warping what would normally be, it's not a straight narration, it's character narration that's throwing it off. Sleep. And then, if I'm doing multiple hours, it's like stop the coffee and switch over to tea. Hydrate. Actually, also stand up, walk around, take your glasses off, and look far into the distance because your eyes, after a while, it's like looking at any screen. You need to refocus your eyes so that you're maintaining all that kind of health stuff. But vocally, it's just pretty much the same as your singing voice. It's not opera, so you don't have to worry in that regard, and you're not going to be pushing it in the way an opera singer would. But if you spend 6 hours talking in the studio, that's a hefty bit. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hi. So you mentioned briefly that Loyal is one of your favorite characters. I was wondering if you could go into it a little bit more, and also with what both of your favorite characters are to read and why. I'd really, yeah.
Well, Loyal. And this is part of the I think the wonderful process the narrator-writer they put clues into the text in terms of how they want it to sound. And especially in this genre, they're making demands on you vocally that are not normal because you've created something outside of what is quote unquote natural. And so you just have to embrace that and attack it. And Loyal was just so much fun because he was such a such an innocent. So there's a whole sense of humor that he has. I mean, who's the Spren who's with, and she's one of my favorite too, just because it's again this kind of innocence thing that's going on. And then there are some great characters that you just love. I mean, Andy Kelp in Bad News, which by Donald E. Westlake.
They want to hear about Wheel of Time characters.
But Wheel of Time, you had things like Tom, where you could just, it's like, okay, open it up and make it as round and pure as you can. Lan, it's like find that deep, no nonsense. I don't have time to spend any energy on what I say. It's going to just cut this way. Those are the things that I'm thinking about as I'm going into those voices.
But I'm just wondering, like, what are your favorites to just, like, you look forward to reading this character? Like, when it's a chapter comes up and it's your favorite character's chapter, like, what is that? Who is that for you? I mean, you went into it a little bit. But no, I want both. Like, I would love to hear. Yeah.
I tend not to play favorites quite as much, and I end up there are like all these different reasons why I love all these different characters, and it's not just about like I love playing the powerful characters, right? Because you want to feel that you are this powerful person, and when you voice a character, you are that character, and so you're like, good, I can blow up the world, and I'm good. But I also really, really love the weak and broken characters, because that's a safe place to explore my own being weak and broken. You can dig into a damaged character safely, because it's not you. I mean, you get to explore who you are as that character, but it's a character. So then you get to leave your weakness and brokenness with that character, and you get to kind of honor the character and pay tribute to the character and say, thank you. Thank you for being the weak and broken part of myself, and I'm going to leave you here in this book. I'm not going to bring you with me. So, I cannot tell you one favorite. Obviously, I enjoyed voicing Varen. I just thought, just this kind of perfect. But there are also like, I really loved doing the Murderals because I did them on an inhale. So when I talked to the Murderal, I was breathing in and
I actually don't have a question. I host a different Wheel of Time podcast, and one of my listeners asked me to tell you that, Michael, they really like the way that you say Drakkar. They wanted me to pass that along, so I did.
All right.
I'm trying to be a writer myself, and I've been trying to find as much as I can about how the sausage is made, so I'm wondering if you have advice for someone trying to be a storyteller of my own epic fantasy.
Congratulations. That's a wonderful thing to be doing. So well done. I mean, I have so much respect for fantasy writers because I think they have a huge canvas, and it really is all about the details. So you have this big overarching story, and every little detail needs to fit and support that overarching story. So I feel like it's you go to like a twofold thing that you're doing. One is you're telling a really big, sort of epic, monolithic story, and they're always basically about the fight between good and evil. Right? So from a general point of view, most fantasy books follow that same arc. And then it's all about the details. It's all about these little characters and what do they each do and what are their relationships with each other. I know that for the Wheel of Time series, it was really helpful to be able to track the different points of view. So that's a tool that is often used in the fantasy genre, where you have multiple storylines, you switch over, and it seats you in a particular character because for this whole chapter, you're seeing the story from their point of view. So that's helpful. So I think it's a combination of like inspiration and construction. So like spirit and strategy. Do you have anything to add?
The tension is always, to me, in the world of fantasy and science fiction, is the world building, and how much work do you have to do as an author in the world building, and then really paying close attention to what that does. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, world building is a bit boring in terms of, as a reader, it's kind of like, if I'm playing a game and I have to read 25 pages of rules before I can actually even put the first piece on the board, that's hard. I want to jump into the game and then kind of get the rules. And that's the mix is always about that. How do you do the world building? And how much is the world building, what's the word?
Essential.
Well, yeah, essential or what I find interesting about the genre is it's trying to strip away the way we look at things so that we're looking at it from a new point of view without all the baggage that this does or that does. And so we can see relationships without totally, it's a bit like, look at my coat, not at the color red of my coat, but my coat and how it's different. But if everybody's caught up and so you've stripped away color, or whatever in your storytelling, so that you actually see the issue from a different point of view and in a different way. And that's the power of the genre, and it's also the difficult thing to communicate that. The big thing is they're always human stories.
Yeah.
And
read.
Yeah.
Just read as much as you can.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, because, yeah.
And good luck.
Yeah.